Last week, we began a series titled F.L.O.W, Upstream. And each one builds on the other, and I think you'll see by the end that it is really creating something. So if you didn't have the opportunity to be here last week, thanks to our team in the back, give them a hand, by the way. They do such a great job in the back. I want to thank them. You can either see the whole service online or just the message. But we talked about F.L.O.W as an acronym, and last week, what is the flow of consciousness that we're in? That's the F. And today we want to talk about the L. Anybody want to guess what that stands for? Love. And isn't it interesting how it fell on Valentine's week? I walked into a grocery store yesterday, and the floral department is just as I walked in, and I'm like, whoa. Love is in the air. Literally, all the balloons were up with hearts all over them, and flowers and roses and chocolate candy. And it's like Valentine's. Love is in the air. How many of you are like, ooh, Valentine's? Okay, that kind of speaks for itself. Whatever. So I have a challenge for us. What if we take this week, starting today, from when you leave today until this time next Sunday, what if we do something in addition to whatever you have planned for Valentine's? And so now if you didn't think you have plans, guess what? You have plans, if you will participate. What if this week we would set the intention for radical compassion and radical dignity? What if we set the intention to practice radical compassion and radical dignity? Now, you can do pretty much anything for 7 days, right? How many of you would be willing to hear me out? And we're going to talk about what love is, what often trips us up around love, perhaps what it's not, and how we can engage it from many different movements of love. But how many of you would seriously be willing to practice radical compassion and radical dignity, which is born of respect, for 1 week? Now, you know somebody that saw you raise your hand is taking notes, especially if they live with you. Radical compassion, radical dignity. A number of years ago, I was in a workshop, and I encountered a woman from Germany, and we became friends. Her English is pretty good. We were able to communicate. She has since moved to Austria, and we stay in touch via Facebook Messenger. And she reached out recently and sent me a message that said, "How are you? Things in your country look topsy-turvy." And I laughed too, because the translation sometime, my friend Pinky that we've been helping who speaks Spanish, she types me messages sometimes and she uses Google Translate. And she sent me one the other day that said, I'm sending you a back-breaking hug. I'm like, I don't need a back. As it turns out, that's pretty much when we say I'm giving you a bear hug, And so sometimes you don't know exactly. And so I thought, when she said, how are you? Things in your country look topsy-turvy. And I wonder what she means. And so I looked up topsy-turvy. And as it turns out, topsy-turvy, in a state of being confused, not well organized, giving importance to the unexpected, giving importance to less desirable things. I think she nailed it. Topsy-turvy. I know many people that are just overwhelmed with what's going on in our nation, and we're reaching a point, if we don't talk about this a little bit, I believe we're doing a disservice. Because we need to talk about the elephant in the room, the elephant in the nation, and there's a way to talk about it that can help us. And so give me just a couple of minutes here. It's very clear that approximately half of our country, just in general, kind of wants to go one way, and the other half wants to go a different way. And that within itself creates a lot of tension. It also is appearing that our very Constitution is on life support at the very moment. And that's scary. And so, every day, most recently, when you wake up, you never know, was it a plane crash? Is it another this or another that? What in the world did I wake up to today? Can you relate? And so most people are finding ourselves in one of three responses, and quite frankly, a lot of us vacillate. The first one is just flat out overwhelm and confusion. It's just like trying to sort out the smoke and mirrors from the serious situation, and there's so much coming, and it's overwhelming that you just kind of get stuck in the overwhelm. That leads perhaps to another response. I know a number of people that have told me, I just can't anymore. I'm just pulling away, I'm checking out, I'm hibernating in my little bubble, and I'm praying and hoping we make it through. Sometimes you have to do that for periods of time. And then there's still others that are saying, I am doing my best to be informed, to understand, to pay attention, and to somehow find something creative to do. Can you recognize with those three states, and maybe you fall in one more than the other? And what I've come to understand is if you really talk to most of those people, most everyone, if you could communicate in a way that would work for them in communicating, you would realize probably you have something in common with most, and that is most people want to be safe. Most people want a world that is more compassionate. Most people do want a world that is more just and more loving and more peaceful. And so I truly believe that, and I know that to be true for me. Now, I'm not saying everybody, because we do realize there are differences. So in the midst of all of this, I'm inviting us to find a way to what I'm calling flow upstream, rather than getting caught up in the currents of drama or overwhelm or what can I fix, that we need to take time to find out, where am I centering my self-awareness, my consciousness? How am I going to flow upstream in a way that serves my soul and my spirit, and hopefully serves the greater good, because they're one and the same. And so in order to do this, I've looked at love. It is true, what the world needs now is what? Love, sweet love. But we say, some people will give their beloved partner a ring or a gift or chocolate, I love you, to your husband, wife, spouse, partner, I love you. You'll say, I love you to your child or grandchildren. If you have a fur angel, a baby like me with 4 legs, you sure love them. I hope I do. And you may be like me, and I love pizza. Anybody else love or something else good that you shouldn't eat I probably should. I don't want to judge, but we could say, I really love your top. I love your hat. We use that word. It's so many things that it can become confusing. So I want to look today at what I have come to understand in my spiritual practice. I'm not pulling this from any one place. This is something that I have discerned in my own spiritual life. It's something I use and I have for years. And I call it 5 movements of love. 5 ways that I express love, I experience love, and I encounter love. When we say 1 through 5, most of us line it up. This is the top and this is the bottom. This is better, this is not. I'm asking you to let that go and see it in a circle. And so however we talk about these, each one is a valid experience and encounter of love. But some of these you may not have thought about. And sometimes people think I am failing miserably because right now there's a lot of sandpaper from my soul out there that is wearing people's faces, and that it's just really hard. And so a lot of people feel like I'm failing and therefore it's not working. Let's reframe that. If you could see it from a broader perspective, I think you'd be encouraged. Don't give up. Love, we're taught, the scriptures ultimately say God is love, and we are made in that image. And through every spiritual or faith tradition, you're going to find love as the central theme, said in different ways. As a matter of fact, the golden rule can be found in every tradition, said in one way or another, and they're very similar ways. If you look at Buddhism from the Dhammapada says, hatred does not cease by hatred, but only by love. This is the eternal truth. If you look at Hinduism from the Bhagavad Gita, when a person responds to the joys and sorrows of others as if they were their very own, they have attained the highest state of union with the divine. That is love. Sufi Rumi, the great poet, said, your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against love. And then if we look at Christianity, which is really being put on the mat when it comes to what does love mean and who is my neighbor, amen? And how do we show up? Well, it's pretty clear. 1 Corinthians 16:4, let all that you do be done in love. I don't hear a lot of wiggle room. Matthew 5:44, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. 1 John 4:8 doesn't mince words. Whoever does not love does not know God, because God is love. And so when we look at all of these things, then we need a way to make it practical. It's like the so what? Yeah, that's great in theory, but how do I live into that? So here we go with the 5. Again, see them as a circle. The first one is that phrase, the type of love that is known as unconditional love. Has that ever baffled you? Have you ever felt like it's just hope, I'm not ever going to live up to unconditional love? Truthfully, a lot of people feel like that, and it's because of how we interpret what that means, unconditional love. Well, when we're talking about these movements of love and what is unconditional love, I'd ask you to consider that unconditional love is how what we call God, all that is, the creative presence, it's what it is what it expresses, it is what it calls all into being, it is that in which we live and move and have our being. And when it comes to unconditional love, we have one job, one primary job, and that is to let it sink in. Because until we have experienced unconditional love, until we really, really have had a quality of love reach us personally that has truly healed any sense of separation within ourselves, we certainly aren't capable of loving everyone else unconditionally if we can't hold that for our own self. Amen? Here's an example. In the Japanese culture, there's a question that says, what is the goal of a teapot? What is the ultimate purpose of a teapot? And so you would say, well, the purpose of a teapot is to make tea. But in the mystical Japanese culture, the purpose of a teapot, a porcelain, porous teapot, is supposed to be used every day, multiple times a day. It is passed from generation to generation. And the purpose of that teapot is to reach a point that it can make tea without needing tea leaves. So how would that happen? Well, if it's a pot and it's porcelain, and over the years, if it has just soaked in tea so long, it literally becomes part of the essence of the vessel. And so it can, over time, reach a point where you can pour hot water in nothing but the pot, and pour out a beautiful cup of tea. Now, do you think you can do that forever once it reaches that point? No. You're still going to need to expose it to tea leaves because it needs to absorb it. Think of that analogy when you think of unconditional love. Our goal with unconditional love is to be in that presence, to let it reach us at a cell level, to let it permeate our being, to permeate our essence to such a point we begin to become that very thing. And the only way to become it is to be in its essence, to experience it. So take some pressure off yourself just for this week, because we're practicing radical what? Radical compassion and radical dignity. So I'm not asking you to go out and figure out how to love everybody unconditionally. What I'm asking you here is find ways yourself to experience love that is in the midst of any condition. You see, that's what love means. There's no condition in which it can't be present. It's there in the midst of any and every condition. It's the kind of love that doesn't say, I'll love you if, I'll love you when. It's not a human quality of love. It is an essence of spirit that we're capable of. And so our job is to soak it up, to let it touch you. Because have you ever noticed, has anybody ever just met your true soulmate and at least for 48 hours you were in love? Didn't everybody look better? Wasn't the world better? Everything was better. When we really are like love, the whole world looks better. So spend some time with unconditional love. And so unconditional love is one of those movements that we're meant to experience. The second one then is compassion. Now, compassion is easy for the people that you love, right? Think about the people that you love, that you care about, your family, your children, people that are really important to you. Compassion comes naturally. But the thing for us to know about compassion is we are beings of emotions and impulses. The universe is such an incredible teacher, and it doesn't matter what I'm going to speak on, somehow or another it shows me. And so a few days ago, I walked out into my garage, first thing in the morning, and I heard rustling and a chirp, chirp. I'm like, oh my gosh, so how did a bird get in here? And so I immediately opened the garage door. My heart is filled with compassion. I hope it's okay. I open the door and like, okay, wherever you are, go. Chirp. I hear it again, the rustling. And so I go around my car to try to see where it is, but it didn't fly. It ran across the floor. Oh no. So my open heart went, hell no. I ain't sharing my garage with a mouse. Not having a mouse in here, that's, So what do? I did what any wise woman would do. I got my blower. That little thing went behind some big Rubbermaid boxes, and I'm like, all right, this is all-out war. I'm thinking, what am I going to do? And so Bobby, the board president, says, you can call me for anything. I'm like, maybe this is... But I knew she was out of town. I knew Butch would come, but I also knew it would take a while. So I'm like, oh, what if it's a mama mouse? What if it has babies? Oh, my Lord, what if I have an infestation? And so I am just working myself in a tizzy. So I try stomping on the floor and blowing, and I can hear that little eep. All right, we're going to do it the old-fashioned way. I'm going to the store and get some traps. But I'm going to get some humane traps. And so I go in, and I get my purse, and I get my keys, and I come out. I'm kind of scared. I slam the door, and I'm stomping. The Garage is still open. I'm hoping that it's left. But no, then I see it. It jumps from one box to the other, and I can see the little face. I'm like, oh my God, I can't even leave. We have to deal with it now. So I get a broom, and just as I lift the broom, and I'm about as far as from here to here, it jumps and lands on the hood of my car. You can't make this stuff up. And that's when I saw it for the first time. It was not a bird. It was not a mouse. It was a chipmunk. I went, oh, poor baby, did I scare you? I didn't mean to scare you. Oh, look at your little tail. And so now it's on the hood of my car, and I'm thinking, God, I wish I had my camera. Nobody's going to believe this. But I stepped back, and I said, let's work together here. And it jumped right off, and it ran out. Yeah. Well, I had to go lay down. My back was hurting. I was exhausted. And as I was lying on the floor trying to recover, it was not even 8 o'clock yet, and all that had happened in the morning. I'm thinking, wow. Everything I just went through from, oh, a little bird got trapped, to, you're not being in here. I'm armored up. I'm afraid. To like, wow, that's interesting. A bird, a mouse, a chipmunk. And I had been thinking about compassion, and I thought, it's easy to be compassionate when you feel a sense of kindred spirit, when you don't feel threatened, when it's cute. But boy, when you think it's going to create havoc and tear something down, when you think it might jump on you and cause you to have the heebie-jeebie kill yourself fit, I don't know what I would do if the mouse jumped on me. When you're afraid, seriously, when our perception causes us to be afraid, we're human biological beings. We go into fight, flight. It is natural at times for you to get your dander up when you see something happening and somebody is tearing something down, or somebody is hurting somebody, or somebody is hurting a whole group of people. It is very natural for you to say, no, I can't get behind that. But where we get tripped up, we say, but I'm supposed to feel compassionate, so I'm not doing it right, so I'm just going to give up. It's not an either nor, it's a both. One thing Gandhi taught is it's okay to get angry. It's okay to be just outraged at times. The question is, you see, the scriptures say Jesus was often moved with compassion. And so when we find ourselves in this, like, well, it's not so easy to be compassionate in this part. So we know there's unconditional love that we can access and call it into our life. We know what it feels like to be compassionate, and we can do our best to expand our circles of compassion. That could be me. By the grace of God, that could be me. The next one is non-judgment. This is just as valid of a movement and experience of love as is compassion, as is non-judgment. You see, it begins to be a little, when you can't feel one of those others, perhaps you can hold a space of non-judgment. Now, it doesn't mean that you toss discernment out the window. We're talking about really two different things here, if you will. When we're talking about withholding judgment, you see, when we judge someone, we say, oh, I know they're doing that because blah, blah, blah. I know they're like that because blah, blah, blah. We've labeled them. We've said we know what it is. End of discussion. When we judge, we tend to also mix the person with the actions. They're one and the same, and we begin to hate them as much as we hate the actions, right? It's really true. It gets tricky here when we do that. But judge not, it does not mean being blind to wrongdoing. It does not mean excusing harmful behavior or actions. It does not mean that you forego discernment. It doesn't mean that you don't have boundaries. It doesn't mean that you can't hold people accountable and work for change and work for justice. But it means we learn to hold people accountable and continue to hold them in the light. And so one of the practices we can do is to begin to, how can I step out of judgment here? I still can have these feelings. It doesn't mean I'm not holding them accountable, but how can I stay open? Because the minute we completely close down, it's basically over. It's about staying open. So there is unconditional love. There's compassion that we can experience. There's non-judgment. The fourth one is do no harm. You see, you may find yourself, for the life of you, something has got you triggered. It's got you riled up. It really is, you feel like it's bad. And so you're not, in that moment, able to access what feels like a different quality of love. But can you do this? Can you do no harm? Do you realize when you commit to do no harm that that is a very loving thing to do? Because the things that we do are important, but also the things that we refuse to do. When we say, I'm not going to cross that line. To do no harm also means the willingness to go back when I realize I did fly off. I did let you have it. When I realize that, it's the courage and the humility to go back and say, you know what, I'm sorry. I don't agree, I see it differently, but I was disrespectful, and I truly apologize for that. Can you imagine how things in relationships would begin to shift? And I'm asking you just 1 week, 7 days, practice it and see what happens. Unconditional love, compassion, non-judgment, do no harm, and then the final one is tend to where it hurts. Tending to where it hurts. If we have been deeply hurt, a mother and father whose child has just been abducted, do you think they are in a state to extend a lot of love to anybody in that moment? No. They are broken. They are hurting. They need to tend to where it hurts. That is not self-indulgent. There's a difference. In the scriptures, Jesus often came apart by himself. He spent time with those that were close to him that would help nurture him. We all need ways to tend to where it hurts, especially in times like this when we are seeing things play out that are potentially very hurtful. And so tending to where it hurts in ourselves is incredibly important. And another aspect of that is when you see someone else hurting, perhaps you extend a hand and say, is there anything I can do? Is there anything I can do to support you? Unconditional love, compassion, withholding judgment, do no harm, and tend to where it hurts. Can you see how each of these are love in expression? And can you see how you can plug in most any time to at least one of those? So a couple of more things. Band, if you want to come up, we're going to show a video. But we have, in addition to this week of practicing radical compassion and radical dignity, Pamela and Charlie Rogers made me aware there's something right now called red cards. Some of you may know about these. We at the church ordered 1,000 of them. And what these cards are is they are constitutional rights, whether you're a citizen or a non-citizen. One side is English and one side is Spanish. If you feel so inclined, I would encourage you, Beth will have them. We've got 3 baskets. You can put maybe one up here and the other one's in the back. I encourage you to pick up a few, keep them in your car. You don't have to make assumptions, but I've already shared one with a person. I gave her a few, and she stood there and read it, and then she started crying. So these are some things that we can do to show compassion. Again, if it feels appropriate for you to do. If it doesn't, then it's not yours to do. So that's one thing. The second thing is I just really want to encourage us that there is so much from a grassroots level that is rising up at a time when we feel like love is, really being challenged in some ways. There's so many things rising up. I want to show you a very short video from a school this week. This is an elementary school in Indiana. And what they decided to do, this school has about 200 to 250 students. They said, we're going to have a parade of nations. And so if your family's origin is Brazil, we want you to come and represent Brazil. If your family of origin is Ireland, is Italy, is Iraq, is Turkey, wherever it is. Well, when they put that out to that group of people, do you know they had 42 different ethnic groups, different nations to show up? And so with parents and people standing by, isn't that incredible? That was actually Michigan. I said the wrong Michigan. But I just want us to remember that there are people all over that are leaning into love. And so this week, as we practice radical compassion, what it means to you, and I hope to hear some of your stories, radical compassion and radical dignity. And to really open your heart to those 5, you may find more, but unconditional love, compassion, non-judgment, do no harm, and tend to where it hurts. Let's go into a song and a meditative prayer. Lead Me, Love by our friend Amy Steinberg. Lead me, love, lead me on. When I'm weary, make me strong. Lead me, love, help me grow. Lead me, love, lead me home. That same verse, pick it up a little. Lead me, love, lead me on. When I'm weary, make me strong. Lead me, love, help me grow. Lead me, love, lead me home. So I invite you to close your eyes for just a moment. With your eyes closed, just visualize those children. We just saw some of them. And how each one was celebrated. And how each one had a sense of pride and something in them was beaming because they were being recognized as who they were and celebrated. When we feel truly seen, when we feel recognized, when we feel that we are celebrated and valued and appreciated and cared for, even when we have the worst days and make the worst mess. When we can really get that there is a love that it's our home signal. There is that love in which we live and move and have our being, and there's nowhere you can turn, there's nowhere you can go, there's no thing you can do, there is no condition in which you can find or place yourself where that love will not be there. And as we take time to go into the silence, perhaps go into nature, to find your own ways of being in communion with that pure love, and feel what it feels like to be loved beyond and through and over. And here's the thing, when we really feel that, something happens. Once love makes its way into our porcelain cells, into our being, once love begins to move within us, it activates love. It literally causes us to want to be love, to want to be more loving, to want to be more lovable, love-able, love-abled. It begins to happen naturally. As we feel that, as we're made of that, that's what we begin to pour out. It's the essence, the flavor, the vibration. It's not just an idea. It is a literal energy, a vibration that lifts us, that seeks to add value, to create and not destroy, to include and not exclude, to uplift and not oppress. It inspires us to be champions for one another and the best that we can be. And so we allow that love to reach us, to move us. We realize that as part of our human experience, we're not always going to feel warm and fuzzy and like what we're dealing with or even who we're dealing with. And that's when we do our best to withhold judgment and do no harm. And here you stand as a powerful presence of love. And then we take time to say, where does it hurt? Where does it hurt in me? Where is there longing? Where is there anything that is standing in the way of love? And then we offer that prayer of love. Lead me, love, lead me on. Verse 2, I am ready, I am strong. Lead me, love, watch me grow. Lead me, love, watch me grow. Yeah, that was beautiful. Beautiful. Radical compassion, radical dignity, and not so many mouse moments, and so it is.